Welcome back to Total Freedom, the show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. I am Rina Lynn. Thank you for joining in, and let's go back to our ancient paganism class we've been doing. We're in part 8, ancient paganism, Canaanite sorcery, and Balaam and forbidden practices. Just what exactly did they do that made God so mad? He kept telling the Israelites, don't do what the pagans do. So let's look at a little bit of that and see exactly what the pagans were doing so we don't repeat that and get in trouble ourselves. Right. I remember this is post flood paganism. From the book of Deuteronomy in the Hebrew Bible, we can create a list of 9 separate forms of paganism. Once we identify these and learn exactly what the practices are, we'll be able to see the form they occur today so we can make sure we're not caught up in it. Deuteronomy 18:10 through 11 says, there shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, or who uses divination, or is an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or one who has a familiar spirit, or a wizard, or a necromancer. But do you ever stop and wonder what exactly each one of these words mean? And they all kind of sort of self explanatory, but maybe not. So let's look. A diviner, the Hebrew word for that is kasim. Kasim is the practice where one gazes at an object until he becomes transfixed by it and forgets the world around him. Once he achieves this great level of concentration, he can now predict future events. By this definition, some form of meditation is required to achieve an altered state of consciousness. Remember that phrase, altered state of consciousness, because that's the goal. We'll see how Balaam did this shortly. Now, we're talking about the use of drugs, hypnotism, mantras, music that just continually repeats, symbols like concentric circles that you stare at until you achieve this altered state of consciousness. Think about crystal balls, black mirrors, black cauldrons filled with water, staring into a candle, those sorts of things. All right, then we have divination itself. This is also known as scrying. A watch for jewelry made for this purposes. Those of you that are watching by video can see the pictures that I've compiled and put in here. On radio, you may just have to look it up. But watch for jewelry made for this purpose. Crystals, pendants to use both for mesmerizing and for use with a scrying mat, or Ouija boards. Now, most of us know what a Ouija board is, but in case you don't, this is a board printed with letters, numbers, and other signs to which a planchette or movable indicator points, supposedly in answer to questions from people at a seance. And again, if you're listening to this on radio, that's great. Afterward, go to YouTube, Rumble, or Brighteon, and you'll be able to watch it again and see the pictures. An observer of times, and I'm probably going to mess this word up, but it's Meonin. It's Chaldean astrology. And this is the same as astrology or stargazing. It's another form of divination. It's a person who looks to the stars for guidance. And we learn about this in Isaiah 47:12-15, Jeremiah 10:2, Daniel 1:20, and again in 5, 7, 11, and 15. We should be aware that horoscopes or anything that takes the place of God's direction is we're going to something outside of God to look for answers. God is our guidance, not his creation. Horoscopes may appear to be harmless, but they become addictive. Reading horoscopes are another form of accepting and honoring occult practices that God has clearly condemned. They were written by people who believe in astrology and are disobeying God. So beware of astrology, horoscopes, numerology, palm readers, etc. In later times, it was confused with the cloud reader and those who divine by observing the flights of birds. Now, if you're like me, back in the day, they had a newspaper that came out every day, and it was the big deal that you would get the newspaper, and we always first thing we wanted to do was read the comic strips, and then we read our horoscope because no one had ever taught us it was wrong. And I remember the first time the pastor said something about it was bad to read your horoscopes. I wasn't too thrilled with him, and I couldn't figure out what was so harmless about reading a few words in the newspaper. But later, as I began to study, I saw what it actually was. You're going to a different source for answers to decide how to live your life instead of the Word of God. So be careful with those things. All right. Next, we have an enchanter. The word for this is the Nakash. The enchanter sees omens in animals. Now, I want you to think of a snake charmer, the scorpion king, the Pied Piper, someone who a lot of times will use music. We've all got that picture in our head, and if you're watching it by video, you can see the little Indian man with his little pipe, his little horn, and the cobra coming up out of the basket because he's charmed by the music. Look down in the bottom left, and you'll see a very popular picture that you can find around, and no one realizes that that's a symbology for the same thing. Um, we've all probably seen the Scorpion King. So this is a charm to control animals to be passive or to attack. And burning incense is another way of charming. We get this from the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 65a. The enchanter, another one, if you're seeing by video or I'll explain it by radio, is you'll see someone with a scorpion tattoo. Now, just because someone has a scorpion tattoo doesn't mean that they're a charmer, because people get tattoos for all different reasons, but it very well could be. Also, you'll see scorpion jewelry. I've seen quite a bit of this now that I've started learning and I know what to look for. Okay, we have, here's some pictures of some incense, and then the next one over, you'll see sage burning. Now, I've actually talked to women that they say that they go into houses, into what's considered a haunted house in the area that I live in. I sell life insurance, been in a lot of people's homes when they just bought it because I do a lot of mortgage protection. And they'll tell me they bought a haunted home. And I can't tell you the clients that people have told me that they've had a sage burner in there to drive out the spirits. Why not just ask God to remove them? Why not take oil and anoint the doors and windows of your home and all four corners of your property? I did that literally the first day that I bought my house. Um, but that's a big deal now, and even in Christian women's circles, you've got all of these shows on TVs and these stores that are for home furnishings, and incense is a big deal. The little, oh, I can't think what you call 'em. You'll see the picture on the right where the water, the liquid bubbles down, and it's a tranquility in your house. Feng shui is one of those things. The art of feng shui is to make the spirits feel comfortable in your home. Now, that ought to slow you down just a little bit. What spirits are we making comfortable in our home? So, again, I'm not sure that burning all incense is wrong, but if you go into a house and it has all of these elements, and I've been in thousands of homes in this area selling insurance. You'll see pagan altars, you'll see pagan pictures on the wall. I've had people open the door with a Baphomet sweatshirt on, with a sweatshirt that says witchcraft on the front. I see cars all the time in the town that I live in and work in that has Hail Satan on it or has all kinds of this symbology for witchcraft, for occultism. And it never ceases to amaze me because I'm from a much smaller area. All right. A sorcerer is a general term for any occult practice. It may include drug use, meditation, or both, but it always has some method to cause an altered state of consciousness. Now, again, there's that term. Compare this to shamanism. The ancient church fathers used the terms magician and sorcerer interchangeably. And if we see pictures like this, and we have the wizard, we have the guy with obviously doing magic, we have someone who looks like a witch, we have all the cauldrons and all of that, we think of something dark. But what if we see this? And for those of you on radio, I've got the magic of Disney. I've got many pictures, Cinderella, the fairy godmother. It's filled with it. The Black Cauldron. We don't think a thing about that. It was the best movies on the market when my children were small, and I hadn't been taught a lot of this stuff. So I enjoyed buying Disney for 'em, watched it growing up all the time. It was just wonderful shows, but I did not realize how much occultism came in with it. So even though the picture's pretty, even though the tar cartoon's cute, we gotta be careful what we're putting in our lives and in the lives of our children. What about a charmer? The word for this is kabar. Charmer is someone who makes charms. Now, a charm is a piece of jewelry worn for protection or to cause something to happen, such as someone to attract love or money to you. Protection charm is called an amulet. Other charms are called talismans. Now, I want to ask you mothers, how many of you have a charm bracelet? How many of you even bought it for your children? I did, not knowing it was wrong. It was the big deal on their birthday or for special things. You would go and get just the right charm that commemorated that thing. Had no idea I was participating in paganism. And you can roll your eyes and go, well, it doesn't mean that to me. I just think that some stuff is innocent. Maybe. But if this goes all the way back to just after the flood, and probably was pre-flood as well, because some of it passed down, then do we even want to take a chance? I know I don't. And we'll break down some of these symbols that I've got shown here in another session later. A charmer is someone who casts a spell to bring the will of the person the spell is cast against under subjection of the one casting the spell. Now, this is the definition of witchcraft. It's forcing your will on another. There's no freedom in this. It's slavery. God calls us to be free. He doesn't force anybody to serve him. He may coerce you a little bit here and there and open your eyes like he did Paul on the road to Damascus, but it's all about freedom. Anything that you're casting a spell, you're using a weapon, you're binding someone with a rope or a chain and you're forcing your will on another, God calls this witchcraft. So if you're highly manipulating someone, or if you're keep on whining and whining and begging until someone does what you want when they've already told you no, you're operating in witchcraft. This is rebellion because God calls us to freedom. This book you'll see down there on the right, The High Magic of Talismans and Amulets, is a real eye-opening read if you want to read that. O foolish Galatians, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as idolatry and teraphim. And I think right here I got two. I was putting in two different verses and put that in the wrong place. That's for 1 Samuel 15:23, not foolish Galatians. That is because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, and he has also rejected thee from being king. And I'm going to have to work on that slide because I know I got that messed up. I'm making myself a note right now to fix that. Sorry about that, folks. All right. In Acts 19:19, Paul's new Christian converts in the city of Ephesus burned all their magic books. Why did they do that? Astrology has unearthed some of these texts. The magic rites of Diana included spells, amulets, and talismans invoking her for aid. This is exactly the same thing found today inside the religion of Hinduism and Wicca. Wicca is what we would call in our society as witchcraft, and that is literally the fastest growing religion for young women right now. And as we talked about in the last section, this sacred feminism, this goddess, that is becoming a great big deal, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to Wicca, but be aware. It's in songs, it's in movies, it's in Disney, it's in almost everything, even just the prevailing of charms in our world for young women. We really need to watch some of this stuff. What about a ob? One with a familiar spirit is what that said in that passage. That's an ob. Now, what an ob is, it's a fortune teller who's also known as a soothsayer or someone who claims to be able to predict the future. Now, I want you to look at these obelisks. Think of the Washington Monument. That's one of the biggest obelisks in the world. They're all over Egypt. They're in other places in the world. Obviously, the Vatican has one right in front of it. But why they're called an obelisk, have you ever wondered about that? At the very bottom of this, there was a room, maybe a series of rooms, depending how big it was, and this is where the ob lived. So it was the obelisk. It was the place of the ob, and you could see it from very far off, so you knew how to find him. Obs conjured up ghosts and spirits and made them materialize and speak. One kind used a skull teraphim, and the other kind used soothsaying. Some rabbis taught that the ob would see the spirit but not hear it speaking. The inquirer would hear the voice but not see the spirit, while bystanders would not hear or see anything. And that's Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 65b. And Tertullian, in his book, The Treatise on the Soul, said this about it. It's that other kind of magic which is supposed to bring up from Hades the souls now resting there and to exhibit them to public view. Now, we have an example of this in the Word of God. The Ob was the kind of Canaanite sorcerer used by King Saul to conjure up the spirit of the prophet Samuel. This event is recorded in 2 Samuel 28 9 through 10. And the woman said unto him, Behold, thou knowest what Saul hath done, how he hath cut off those that have familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Wherefore then layest thou a snare for my life, to cause me to die? And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, As the Lord liveth, there shall be no punishment happen to thee for this thing. Then said the woman, Whom shall I bring up unto thee? She was pretty easily convinced, wasn't she? So it was probably a pretty good paycheck attached. And he said, "Bring me up Samuel." And when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, "Why hast thou deceived me? For thou art Saul." And the king said unto her, "Be not afraid, but what sawest thou?" And the woman said unto Saul, "I saw gods descending out of the earth." And he said unto her, "What form is he of?" And she said, "An old man cometh up, and he's covered with a mantle." And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And Samuel said unto Saul, and on and on and on. Now, Saul was God's chosen king for Israel when they wanted a king like everybody else. And what's he doing here? Is he laying on his face at the temple talking to God? Is he offering sacrifices to God? No, he's going up to find the 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 Canaanite sorcerer. So see how anybody can be drawn into this? Give me just a minute and let me acknowledge my sponsors, please. Folks, you want to help Total Freedom Radio stay on the air? Please help support our sponsors. We have Simply Clean Foods. Primary focus is to bring clean food to people all around the world and change the way we look at freeze dried food in our daily cooking. As a community focused company, they strive to help our veterans through food donations and provide food to victims of natural disasters. They're dedicated to providing the best quality food you can buy next to fresh from a farmer's market. Their stringent quality controls and absolute zero GMO policy in testing for heavy metals make them unique in the storable foods market. They say just because our food is freeze dried doesn't make it just for emergencies. Our line of fruits, vegetables, and meats are suitable for everyday use, and you won't have to worry about throwing away food that you don't use. Just take out the amount you need and reseal the package for use within the next 6 months. Go to rinalynn.com to the affiliates page and please click in from there, and it'll take you straight to my page, and it'll kick back just a little bit to us to help us with our cost. Thank you so much for supporting our sponsors. All right, I do appreciate you buying from my sponsors. They kick just a little bit back to this show that helps us go forward and keep everything going. It's a little bit crazy on this end sometimes. Um, oh, my thing went forward. Let me see. Okay, here we go. All right. All right, what about a wizard? The word for this, and I may be saying this wrong as well, is Yidinani. The Talmud states that the name for a wizard, a Yidinani, comes from a word loosely translated as an extinct animal. It also states that no one remembers exactly what kind of animal it was. The name carried over to mean those who used a bone of this extinct animal by placing it in their mouths, and through some incantations can have the dead speak through this bone. This has been translated as a ventriloquist or medium. Now, this goes all the way back to the teraphim, I believe, where you've got to have um, a dead body part to reach the spirits or your ancestor. It's quite possible that the term in this ancient passage means instead of instinct animal, a bone from the deceased. So again, it goes back to like them using the skull. Mediums today often ask for an artifact of the deceased in order to try to make some sort of contact with them. It operates the same way. Now, those of you that can see the pictures, we've all seen this little picture of the medicine man with the bone in his hand with the skull on top, shaking it and doing his stuff. And we've seen the guy with the bone through his nose, too. We don't think anything about it. This is in our cartoons. We came up with this in our culture, and it's just as natural and normal for us to see it as anything. What about in New Orleans where they wear the necklaces of small bones or of teeth? Sometimes they'll wear a band around a stove hat and do that. Look at the lady on the right. We've got an absolutely beautiful woman. She has a necklace made of skulls and bones, and then her makeup is done to make her look like a dead person. Notice the stitch marks over her mouth. This is indicative of the teraphim where they sewed the mouth shut. Remember the shrunken heads? How they had the mouth sewed shut so it wouldn't flap open? It's exactly what that is showing. What about a necromancer? This is also translated as a dreamer, and there's a reason for that. A dreamer is a little bit different than the wizard. According to this passage in the Talmud, necromancers were said to spend nights in cemeteries in order to invoke the spirits of the dead. They would wear special clothing designed exactly for this purpose and burn incense to attract the spirits. Once the ritual was thought to be complete, the necromancer would go to sleep on the grave of the deceased, expecting them to appear in their dreams and answer questions. How'd you like to get the rules of what to do next in your life that way? I just find some of this stuff so utterly bizarre, but it's just normal to an occultist. What about a magician? We hear a lot about magicians. We go to see them. We have them in our schools for our children to entertain them. The word for this is a cartoon. A magician and soothsayer are general terms for any of the previous practices. A sorcerer uses more ceremonial magic, and this is calling on spirits for aid, while a magician uses more non ceremonial magic. This is relying on the power of the human spirit without asking other spirits for aids. Biblically, whether it's the occultist thinks he is or is not contacting spirit or using their own power, it's exactly the same demonic manifestation, and we're told to stay with it. Yeah, if it's good magic in our society, we don't think anything about it. We try to stay away from black magic, or at least we used to. Now, either one's just as prevalent. But the Bible makes no distinctions. God says it's all wrong. Well, let's look at Balaam. Balaam was the only recorded prophet in the Bible who used sorcery. He rebelled against God. In these passages, we can see that he used divination, which required a trance or altered state of consciousness. Angias said unto Balaam, Conjure for us, I pray thee, with this witchcraft or sorcery, that we may know who will prevail in this battle to which we are now proceeding. And Balaam ordered that they should bring him wax, and he made thereof the likeness of chariots and horsemen, representing the army of Angeas and the army of Egypt. And he put them in the cunningly prepared waters that he had made for that purpose. And he took in his hand the boughs of myrtle trees, and he exercised his cunning, and he joined them over the water. And there appeared unto him in the water the resembling images of the Egyptians and the sons of Jacob. Now, some of what they would do here, they'd put water in a dark pot, like a cauldron, and they would add black ink. And again, it made it sort of a mirror, but it also put them in an altered state of consciousness. So he wasn't watching these necessarily form in the water, the chariots and doing stuff. It brought him into this altered state of consciousness, and he was seeing it there. Zepho said unto Balaam, Try by divination for us, that we may know who will prevail in the battle, we or the Egyptians. And Balaam rose up and tried the art of divination, and he was skillful in the knowledge of it, but he was confused, and the work was destroyed in his hand. And he tried it again, but it did not succeed. And Balaam despaired of it, and left it, and did not complete it, for this was from the Lord, in order to cause Zepho and his people to fall into the hands of the children of Israel. We get that in Jasher chapter 64, verse 27 and 29. Balaam also interpreted dreams correctly, according to Jasher 70, verse 5. Now, Balaam was called a magician, a sorcerer, an artificer, and a user of divination. He was not classified as a necromancer or wizard or one with a familiar spirit. This shows a clear distinction between the two theories of magic. Theory holds that there were two kinds of magic. Again, ceremonial magic and non ceremonial magic. Ceremonial magic would be when you do some ritual to make contact with a spirit, and then the spirit is supposed to do something for you. Non ceremonial magic is defined as a human doing a ritual, not necessarily to bring up some spirit, but to use the psychic power from his own human spirit, which I would say probably it's already trapped inside you, and it's pretty much the same thing. All right, let's look at this chart. We got the names, whether it's non ceremonial magic or ceremonial magic on one side, and the description of what it is. I'm bringing that out for the people listening by radio. All right. A sorcerer or a magician is a general word for an occult practitioner. Those that were doing non ceremonial magic would be a diviner who sees the future through trances, an observer of times. This is an astrologer. An enchanter. This is someone who charms serpents and animals to do his bidding. A charmer who makes talismans and amulets. Then you have ceremonial magic. This is your wizards who speak, spirits speak through a possessed medium. We have a necromancer. They speak to the dead in his lucid dreams. Then one with familiar spirit causes a spirit to materialize in a circle. Some use a teraphim spell. Think about the modern witchcraft shows we've watched where they make the witch circle on the floor, and then they call up the spirits in the center of it, and they put salt around it and all these things that's supposed to confine the spirit to that area so they will be safe. Right? In pre-flood astrology is centered on observing and calculating times. These are based on a predetermined set of rules that one would calculate the next time one would be able to contact a god or goddess and work a magic rite. For instance, a special spell might only work on Halloween or Yule. This ideal is still seen in the myth that on Halloween, ghosts and spirits are more likely to come back and stronger, and magic rites work better. Now, the horoscope itself was invented by Chaldean astrologers, and Hippolytus, in his book on heresies, tells us that. Now, we'll start going into more forbidden practices next time, but I want to stop right here. And I want to talk to you just a little bit about my book series. And I'm going to try to cut this off so that it won't play because I want to say something else besides what it says. Let me stop it. All right, here's my book series that is out so far. There's 5 of them, and book 6 is fixing to come out, and I'll show you that just in a minute. But it starts with a safe haven where you meet some of our main characters. Then it goes into the hourglass flips. Someone is in trouble, and the hourglass is started, whether they're going to find this person in time to save a life or not. Right, then you have a ranch haven. This is a man who owns a ranch in Texas, and he gathers people around them to help them heal, to keep them safe. It's known as a haven and has been for a long time. Then we have God's Men. In God's Men, a task force is formed to save um, trafficked women and children. And obviously, they've named it God's Men because they're all Christians and they're going in and they're battling these occultists that is killing people, enslaving people, trafficking people, doing all kinds of things. And this has been their nemesis for over 100 years. And then the last book out is Intriguing Truth. This is when some of the past starts coming back to haunt them, and some of the things that each one of them have gone through that they've hidden from the rest, it begins to be made known, and they all have to deal with their own secrets, their own things that are coming out, and each other's. And it makes everybody have to really dig deep. And during all this, they're fighting the enemy. Um, Now, the next book that's coming out just very soon, it would have been this weekend, but I was busy with something else, is called Is There Any Safe Place? This is when the Serpent King, who is their nemesis, basically a fallen angel right under Lucifer, totally determined to stomp them out. Now it's getting dangerous. Now they're really ripped to shreds. Everything's happening. So what are they going to do now? 'Cause there's no place to run. There's no place to hide. Story just keeps getting better to better as God gives it to me. It's just I keep reading. I'm like, whoa, didn't see that happening. Really, really good series. Now I want to talk to you about book 1 because, of course, that's where you start. And I forgot to put a picture of it alone in here, so we'll just have to just leave that one up there for now. So I'm going to read you the preface of that book just to give you an idea. This book came into being due to my having a life experience that clearly showed me that some people love to do good and care for other people, and some people love to hate and hurt others. In my journey to heal and move forward, I learned a lot about hearts, souls, and why people do the things they do. I met many people with stories of hardship, pain, and loss in their effort to heal and grow through it all. A lot of my characters are based on real people that I've interviewed. Nobody's story is told straight, so if you want to shoot me yours, shoot it to AskRinaLynn@yahoo.com. As I pondered all of this, I wondered, what if this were taken to the extreme? On one hand, you had those who truly followed God, and on the other, those who were completely dedicated to the enemy. I've studied the story of good and evil for most of my life, trying to rightly divide the word, and I just couldn't get away from it. I'd meet another person and hear another story, and I understood this isn't something new. God began to lay a burden on my heart to let it play out and just see what it would be like. This is a kingdom war in the heavenly realm. It's battled out in the human realm as well. What happens when one group of families is determined to follow God and do good things, and another group of families are dedicated to the old gods, the fallen ones themselves, the demons of old? How would that play out in our modern world, where righteous people are bound to follow the laws of God and man, and the pagans follow no law but to do what thou wilt and indulge in every sensuous pleasure they can? What if the pagans knew who the members of the godly families were and have targeted them and their children for over a century, but stay hidden in the shadows and behind righteous and upstanding facades while waging a continuous war upon their hated enemy? What if you were a member of the righteous family and had to be on guard, alert 24/7, never knowing what direction the attack was coming from or who was behind it? Where bodies are found mutilated or never found at all? Where satanic ceremonies set off a series of events that you have to stop or someone you love will die? How far would you go to protect your loved ones? What if even law enforcement and the employees at the local hospital were infiltrated by the enemy? Where would you turn to for safety, solace, or help? Who do you trust against an enemy that will cross any line, no matter how heinous? Join me as I begin this series that tells a tale of versus evil in today's world with today's laws and God's forever rules of engagement. Watch how the men and women of God are pushed to the wall time and time again. Watch how they peel back layers in themselves and grow as they fight the good fight on a scale most of us will never experience. Now, if you're on my newsletter, I'm going to send everybody a free chapter to go along with this new book when it's released. Go on to rinalynn.com and you click into any book title and it'll take you straight to amazon.com. Again, book 1 is called A Safe Haven. Book 6, Is There Any Safe Place? Is coming out very soon, so catch up. I think you're really gonna like this story, and I love where it's gone from here, so I'll just keep releasing it as time allows. Thank you once again for spending time with me at Total Freedom with Rina Lynn. I'll see you next time.